What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of a Wild Time podcast tonight. Tonight's going to be a Q&A session. Got a lot of great questions that were asked on Facebook, so I'm excited to dive deep into those and dissect them because there's some really good stuff. Thanks for all the subscriptions. Thanks for all the likes. Thanks for all the shares. We've had some really good guests lately. We've had Matthias Hughes, 90s, 80s, 90s action star. Had a wonderful conversation with him, man. Talked fitness, talked marriage, talked action movies, a lot of his career. And we also talked about him coming back on as a guest. I had Bo's Tractor Supply, which is a proud sponsor of this show tonight. Bo's Tractor Works. Let me tell you something. Right there. The Appalachian Hills 11. Listen, my dad just tried it tonight, put it on his knee, his wrist. My brother put it on his shoulders and back, and they were immediately relieved of pain. It's unbelievable. This product is doing wonders across the eastern part of the state, hoping it expands. I'm hoping that Bo and his crew gets this out to everybody that needs it, because it is an unbelievable pain reliever, and it's got so many good benefits to it. Listen, Bo's Tractor Works, Appalachian 11. You can't beat it. And also, tonight's episode is going to be brought to you by Weird Ass Hot Dogs. Richard Burchett and the crew. I just went up there last week. They're going to be up there at the 606 Lumberjack deal in the plaza in Pikeville, Kentucky this Saturday. I'm excited to go back up there and get the serial killer. These hot dogs are fun. The lemonade is killer. I love the watermelon lemonade. It was a blast. I think I'm going to go with the peach this time. But, thankfully those guys sponsor this show, and we can give their business a shout out and the support it deserves, because without those guys, man, I wouldn't be able to do this show. They help me out a lot. So if you're hungry, get up to Weird Ass Hot Dogs. If you need relief, get up to Bo's Tractor Works. So tonight, first off, I want to talk a little bit about some future guests that I've got. Possibly have my good buddy Kobe Carmichael, professional wrestler, good friend. Thinking about having, we're talking, we've been wanting to do this forever, actually, and we hadn't had a chance. So we talked a little bit, maybe this weekend, maybe tomorrow night, maybe Saturday. He's going to try to get in. We'll talk a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of other things. And also Marshall Teague from Roadhouse, Walker, Texas Ranger. Marshall was the bad dude that fought Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse in the denim. Just straight up 80s tough guy in the denim outfit. They fought in front of the riverbank, and it was an iconic scene. Marshall's talked about coming on. Got some cool guests lined up. Going to keep reaching out. So tonight, like I said, we've got some questions. I'm excited. And first off, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and it's way overdue, because one of my favorite artists, Billy Squier, released his first single in like 30 years. It's Harder on a Woman. If you're a fan of classic rock like I am, Billy Squier, Harder on a Woman. And I'm going to give a little bit of a listen right here, man. It's old school Squier. It's just Billy Squier being awesome, dude. Guitar playing is tough. His lyrics are awesome. It's got a groove to it, man. I'm 38 years old, and when I seen Billy Squier had a new single out, it was like Christmas morning for me. So it's got good groove, man. Just straight up rock and roll from the most underrated man in music history, in my opinion. Music history. You heard it right there, man. That's what I think about Billy Squier. His songs, his albums supplied a soundtrack to my life, still to this day. So Billy Squier, It's Harder on a Woman. So if you want to download that on all the formats, Apple, Spotify, whatever you choose. I'm cracking open a Diet Pepsi now. We're going to get down to these questions. Got a lot of questions, and I'm excited to get to them. First one is from my good friend, Big Swag Brett Wagner, the lost Leatherface himself. As you can see right here, the lost Leatherface. He actually signed my sledgehammer up in Pikeville, Kentucky. Oh, my bad. Pikeville at the Harley Davidson shop a few years back. Brett, myself become good friends. He's going to be at Scarefest this year. Brett's been in the Crazies. He's been on Sons of Anarchy. He's done a lot of cool stuff in pro wrestling world, which is his question. He had a question to me about who had the better gimmick, Bam Bam Bigelow or Big Van Vader? Excellent question, Brett. In my opinion, the better gimmick went to Big Van Vader. And I'm going to tell you something. I think that, man, both of those were talented bigs. I think Bam Bam Bigelow may have been a little more talented. Not taking anything away from Vader because they were very similar in style in the ring. But the gimmick of Big Van Vader was actually, if I'm not mistaken, offered to the Ultimate Warrior in Japan. That was created. That gimmick was created for someone, and the Warrior passed on it. It went to Vader. And if you watched earlier Big Van Vader stuff, man, that mask he took off and put down, the smoke would come up, and I can remember my dad wasn't big into wrestling, but he appreciated a big athletic dude. He could tell the real guys that were, athletes. And Kurt Hennig comes to mind. He was a big Kurt Hennig fan, but Big Van Vader was another dude that he really appreciated. Now, Bam Bam Bigelow was awesome. Dude do cartwheels all around the ring. Moonsaults also. Vader could do a moonsault. Those guys are over 400 pounds. But gimmick wise, Big Van Vader, the gimmick is it's one of the best ever. I mean, he was just a big, massive bully and a monster from the Rocky Mountains. Bam Bam Bigelow was sort of like a biker. So I would side with Vader, but they're both awesome workers, both icons of the industry and well respected. So the next question comes from my good friend Fright, Matthew Brian Salone. He said, what about the time I managed you at All-Star Wrestling in 2017, Gary Dameron show? That was a killer time to remember. And anybody that knows me knows that Matt Sloan, as I call him, Fright, he does all my artwork. He does my facial, my makeup when I wrestle. Very talented guy, awesome artist. He's got a character, he done these comic books. Andy Verrill was his character, and he brought it to life. I wanted him to bring it to life because he, as a pro wrestler, when you're a character, you want to dive deep into that character and bring it to life. And he had this character. He wasn't a pro wrestler or nothing, but he made an excellent manager. I mean, I was the human horror movie, so it was appropriate to have Andy Verrill escort me to the ring at West Virginia when I wrestled. It was John Horn. And man, the finish of that match is one of my favorites of all time. So I was Pennywise from It, the classic Pennywise. And we had this red balloon gimmicked up with water inside of it. But the crowd thought it was acid, battery acid. So John gets ready to finish me. And lo and behold, Andy Verrill comes up onto the ring, and John drops me and comes over, and he grabs Andy Verrill. And about that time, Andy reaches up with that balloon and pops it. The liquid goes all over John, and he stumbles back. I reach him, grab him, drop him in the slaughterhouse drop. 1, 2, 3. We're out of there. And the crowd is hot. I mean, we were getting some heat there, and it was awesome. But recently had Andy Verrill bring Pennywise back to the ring last week at Mullins, at North Point Academy, excuse me. And Andy's always lurking from time to time. So thank you for the question, Bright, and thank you for escorting the human horror movie to the ring when he needed the backup. J.R. Greer with the next question. Mr. Greer says, who is your biggest challenge in the ring? Man, I've had some guys that really challenge me because I've been blessed to work with some really good competition. Michael Jameson comes to mind first because he always challenged me, and he did not like to have a bad match. He prided himself on having great matches. So anytime we laid out a match, and we had probably 5, and they've all been really good. One had to stop prematurely due to a busted nose, but that's a story for another time. But he's the first one that comes to my mind because we go 25 minutes, usually 25 to 30 minutes, and he's nonstop. And he brings the best out of me. And it's a challenge to go with somebody like that. John Noble is another guy, Kobe Carmichael. They're just cardio machines. And, I'm a big, strong dude. Cardio isn't my strong point in my 30s. It wasn't my 20s when I was into MMA, but 30s, I just wanted to be big and ruthless. And, cardio wasn't in my, I leaned more towards weight training than I did cardio, which is, I should have took more care of myself and my lungs. And I still do from time to time. But those guys, my biggest challenges for sure. There's certain people I hold to a high regard that I want to do good for. I want to do good every time I walk through the curtains, but there's certain guys I respect so much that I do not want to drop the ball. But Michael Jameson's probably that guy, I would say, that challenges my biggest challenge in the ring. Next question is from my good friend Teresa Evans. Known her all my life, consider her a big sister. And she was wondering, what is the favorite music genre? Wow. I'm a big classic rock guy. Always influenced by my character in wrestling is influenced by the front man of rock. I consider myself a rock and roll front man that don't sing, if it makes sense. I always loved the charisma, the stage persona, the stage presence, everything. I always say Axl Rose, Scott Weiland, David Lee Roth, and Billy Squire. My biggest influence is you shake them up in a bottle and out comes me, Adam Wilde. I always said that. But I'm into 80s music. I'm into everything. But classic rock, if I had to primarily put my main one, that's going to be Van Halen, Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses, Stone Temple Pilots, Rolling Stones, The Cars, Robert Palmer. I could keep going, man. I'm just a big music guy. And Teresa is too. Teresa's got some cool. She's big into Keith Whitley. She loved Keith Whitley. Who else did she like? She's into everything too. Teresa's. You could talk music with her for days. Thank you for that question, Teresa. My old buddy Garrett G said, if you had to pick a wrestler, this is a wild question for a wild time. If you had to pick a wrestler to be with you in a zombie apocalypse like The Walking Dead, who would you pick and why? Well, I'm obviously going to go with Ravishing Rick Rude, my hero, because Rick Rude, one, was the toughest dude of his, one of the toughest guys of his era. I'm sure he would have a good game plan on how we should deal with these jokers. And, Brian Pillman would be another one, the loose cannon, but I don't know that he would have the head on his shoulders that Rick Rude would have at the time. It's untelling what would happen with Pillman. But yeah, those would be the guys that I would pick Rude probably, for sure. Jen Combs said that need to interview me and Kevin Keithley, and I'd love to. Those are two good friends of mine from out the gray area. Jent's awesome. Jent's got some really good stories. Him and Kevin both. They were really good friends with my older brothers. They all went to high school together, and we need to get Gent on to talk about Gent stock. That's a heck of a story right there. That's a heck of an event when they were younger. So, Gent, we need to get you and Kevin on here immediate. Well, whenever you get time. I'm going to take a swig of this and then we'll return. I may put us a little background music here, man, if y'all are cool with that. Let's see here, guys. Let's play a little Emotions in Motion by Billy Squire, since Billy Squire has put that album out recently, or not album, but that single out like I was talking about. Well, shoot. Back to the questions. Guilford Hall, my good buddy Guilford, former pro wrestler, he says, who was your best two workers together against one another? My favorites of all time was Macho Man and Ronnie Garvin. That's a good question right there, Guilford, because I'm going to tell you that the way I took it was your favorite rivalry, who all competed against each other at a high level and stuff. Ronnie Garvin, the Hands of Stone, or the One Man Gang against Macho Man ICW days. Heck of a rivalry. My favorite, I like Tully Blanchard and Dusty Rhodes, or Tully and Magnum. Tully Blanchard, one of my favorite workers of all time. Definitely one of my favorite heels. He had so many good rivalries, man. He just had everybody hating him, and Dusty had everybody loving him. So it was so easy for a feud with Tully to be good because he brought the heat. Magnum and Tully probably is my favorite rivalry. I love that I Quit cage match with those two. It was one of the most violent matches ever. If you've not seen it, you want to check it out if you're a professional wrestling fan. Tully Blanchard, Magnum TA, I Quit match. And you can thank me later. My good friend John Henderson from Doomsday Crypt has dropped in. He said, what MMA/wrestler guest would be a dream come true? That's a heck of a question, John. Thank you for that. And keep up the good work with Doomsday Crypt. I've been really blessed and lucky to have some awesome MMA guest fighters. One of my favorites of all time, Gabriel Napao Gonzaga, had a really good conversation with him. If I had to pick one guy, though, to sit down and talk to, it would be the guy that I looked up to in mixed martial arts, Randy the Natural Couture. That would be awesome. I've been lucky enough to meet Randy a couple of different times. Every time he's been just a stand-up gentleman. So, yeah, Dan Henderson would be another good one. I like Junior Dos Santos. That would be fun. But if I had to have one, it would be Randy the Natural Couture. Wow, this is a good one right here. From Ken Cantrell. Of all the venues you have competed in, what was your favorite and what venue did you dread going to? My favorite will be forever the Rec Center in Paintsville, because that's where I got my start. That's where we've had some legendary shows. The crowd was always hot. I always looked forward to that Saturday going to Paintsville. Always did. It was fun. It was just the right capacity for everyone. It was intimate, and all the people that came out was awesome, man. So I love Paintsville. Now, dreading, I never really dreaded going anywhere. If I was lucky enough and blessed enough to work a show, I never really dreaded it. Now, Wheelwright, before Wheelwright's renovation, which has been awesome. I've been up there for the basketball games and stuff. Before the renovation, it could get pretty rough and cold in there in the wintertime. But you forgot about that once you came out and you seen all the fine folks that Wheelwright up there cheering you on, and you forgot about the cold air hitting you. But Painesville for sure, though, man, as far as just the road trips down with Mikey and Kobe and Mitch, and just the camaraderie and it being our home turf. I always loved the Rec Center, and I miss it, to be honest. And thank you, Ken, for that question. It was awesome. I like that. It's a different one, a different professional wrestling question. And let's see here. My good buddy Josh Crum, who was a guest on a Wild Time podcast from the band Downtrend, guitarist. He said, if you could go back in time to any concert or festival, what would you choose and why? Man, that is a good one. It's going to be simple. If I could go back in time, it would be Buzz Fest of 04. Buzz Fest of 04 in Nashville. And it's because I was there. It was the first time me and my friends took a trip out of the state together. We were all just turned over 18, and we were out on our own, and we got to go see Velvet Revolver. That was our band, Guns N' Roses and Stone Temple Pilots. We loved them. That was our band at the time. It was a big deal. And it was the first show of their tour. We went to Nashville. We also got to see Seven Dust, Lit, Saliva, and a young band named The Music. They were young. They had a Led Zeppelin feel to them, and I was really hoping they took off because they had that first album they had, man, Freedom Fighters, Breaking. They had some good music, and it just, I don't know what happened to them, man. I expected big things out of them, but that would be just because we were there, and that I hold special memories. But obviously, Ozfest back in the day, one of the first ones, or Woodstock 2 in the 90s when the mud. I think that would have been a blast to be a part of. But yeah, Buzz Fest of '04, man. I think I'd like to go back those memories with my friends and do that. If I had to pick one that I didn't go to, I'd probably say Woodstock 2 and watch Nine Inch Nails and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jackal and those guys. Clayton Akers here had a killer question. I'm gonna take a swig of Diet Pepsi real fast. Clayton Akers is another talented dude, man. He makes my Leatherface cutouts and such good detail. I can tell him which one to make, and he makes these, man. He's actually going to be at Adam Newsom Presents. I don't know if it's going to be Saturday Night Friday or Friday the 13th. We have to find out something cool to call it. This October, he's going to set up and sell some of his horror cutouts. He's had Beetlejuice. He's had some Chucky. I mean, he had some cool stuff. But his question, as a fan of action movies, I was wondering, what's your favorite Bruce Willis action movie? He's got two questions. And as a sports fan, what is your favorite sports moment? My favorite Bruce Willis action movie will always be Die Hard. I love Die Hard. Great movie. My son loves it now, so we watch it before Christmas. It's got a Christmas feel to it. But Bruce had some awesome movies, man. Another one, action-wise, that came to mind was Last Boy Scout with Damon Wayans. My brother Rocky used to rent it a lot as a kid, and I always thought it was a good movie. But my favorite Bruce Willis movie is an erotic thriller named Color of Night. And I used to watch it all the time as a kid. And it's got a really major plot twist to it. But Color of Night, anybody that knows me knows I always talk about that movie and the soundtrack and everything. And it's Bruce Willis and Jane March, Brad Dourif, Lance Henriksen. There's some really good actors in that movie, man. And it's a good one to watch. Make sure no kids are around. My favorite sports moment, simple. When John Stockton hit the three-pointer to send the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals for the first time, man. I had been a fan of the Utah Jazz since I was a real small kid when I got into basketball, and they had always got to the Western Conference Finals against the Houston Rockets and Hakeem Olajuwon, who Clayton Akers is a big fan of, and they just never could get over it. Hakeem, Clyde Drexler, Kenny Smith, I mean, dude, Robert Ory, they had a good team. Then they got Charles Barkley there. But I'll never forget, me and my dad always watched the Utah Jazz with me. He's a big fan of Malone and Stockton too. But it was game 6, and it was like on a Thursday night, if I'm not mistaken. And they were down in the fourth quarter double digits, and he told me to go to bed. Well, I thought there'd be a game 7 in Utah. I went and laid down, and the door opened, and he said, "You might want to walk back in here." And I was like, "What's going on?" He said, "It's close, and there's not much time left." So I got up and went in there, and did Stockton score? Somebody scored to tie the game. Well, Houston goes down and misses, and the Jazz have a chance to win. And I'll never forget that moment because I can remember it vividly. They throw it into him. He takes a dribble or two, pulls up, hits it, wins the game. And my heart, I'm not even joking, it took off, and tears come out. I mean, like a woman or something. And tears come out of my eyes. I ran through the house, I jumped onto my living room couch, man, and just, I guess when you're invested in a team like that, man, and you feel like you're part of something. But I was so tickled, man. I didn't have no expectations of them beating Chicago. I was just glad they got out of the West. I mean, that was a moment, though. My favorite sports moment for sure, dude. For sure. Remember it to the T. It was 6th grade. I was in 6th grade, yeah. Mickey Hamilton said, if you could have any musician as a guest interview, who would it be? And Mickey, that's a killer question. I've had some good musicians on. I've had J.D. Hall. I've had Josh Crum that just asked a question a minute ago. And if I had to be able to talk to somebody, it would be Scott Weiland. He passed away, but he was my all-time favorite musical artist. I'd love to sit down with Axl Rose. That would be a cool one. Me and David Lee Roth, I would say, would be funny. It would be a laugh fest the whole time. Me and Billy Squire would be a good one. But I would like to see. I'd like to have one. I'd like to see Jim. I'd like to sit down with Jim Morrison or Mick Jagger. Those would be some good ones. Steven Tyler, that'd be fun. But if I had to pick one, it would be Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots. I would like to talk to Robert Palmer too. And my good buddy Bo Matheny from Bo's Tractor Works. Again, shout out to Appalachian Hills 11. Man, it's a miracle in a jar. Thank those guys for sponsoring us. And thanks for the question, Bo. And he said, who would your ideal opponent be to square off against? And which opponent would you dread walking into the ring to square off against? And why on each? Can't say Stan Hansen either. No, Stan Hansen knocked Big Van Vader's eye out of his eye socket, and he was legally blind. And if he didn't hit you right, he'd take your head off with a clothesline. Can't say Stan Hansen. So my ideal opponent would have been, I would have liked to work heel against Stone Cold in the 90s when he hit the boom. You know, I'd like to have been in that position The Rock was in. And I'm the worst heel ever, as Michael Jameson would tell you, and Kobe Carmichael. But that would have been cool if I could have. You know, I'd like to have had that. I'd like to have that spot. That would have been awesome. Who would have I dread to have worked? Man. Some of those stiffer guys or rough guys, I would rather work somebody like that that's tough and stiff than somebody that just isn't good or won't sell. Because I'm a stiff worker myself. I mean, I'd rather it look, you know, I'd rather be in that situation than have it look stupid. But who would I dread working against, man? Somebody I don't think I would mesh with. The Ultimate Warrior. Can I say that one? Although it'd be a good payday. But someone like that, someone that's don't like to sell. That's one thing that kills me in wrestling. Guys that don't want to sell or afraid they'll look weak. I mean, I don't want to. I sell my butt off. Always have, always will. I believe in it. But there's guys that I know I'm legitimately tougher than. I mean, I feel comfortable saying that says, I don't want to look weak, man, or I don't, I can't sell that. And I'm like, dude, it's a work, it's just, you got to sell. And guys that don't sell, man, they are, how can I say it? Insecure, I think. That's my opinion. So someone that don't sell good, that's what I'll say. Oh, good question. Andy Burke, John M. Stumbo basketball coach and teacher. He says, what would it take to bring wrestling to John M. Stumbo? Well, Andy, it would take the Board of Education letting us in. That would be the first step. But we used to bring it to the baseball field out back a lot of classic matches with BCW out there. It was almost like an old NWA feel, like a Great American Bash under the bright lights. I loved it. We got to do a benefit show for a young child that passed away, my good friend Nick Hall's daughter, and we done really good there, man. Raised a lot of money for them to get a headstone or help get a headstone. That's what that was what was on our mind, to help them ease them out, man. And we packed Johnny out, and it was such a good match. Me and Michael Jameson against Eddie and John. Man, it's a highlight. It's a highlight. It was in the new gym, and it was just anything that could have went good that night went good. And I think it was just the way it worked. John Noble was stuck in traffic. Now listen to this. He was stuck in traffic on Mud Creek because there was a wreck. And he parks his vehicle at Branham's Creek Church and walks to John M for that match. That's a true story. It's a shoot. So there wasn't nothing stopping that night from being a success. It was just something great to be a part of. But the Board of Education, that would be who to talk to, man. I've been trying. I know Keith Smallwood on the board is a big wrestling fan. So hopefully we may be able to get that Get that down there because I love wrestling at my old stomping grounds. Kobe Carmichael says, Adam, Starcade 97, Hogan versus Sting. Who was your favorite to win and why? They booked it wrong. No other way to say it, man. Sting should have went over clean with no controversy, and the blow off, it should have just went down clean and with no smoke, dusty finish. Hogan politicked his way. Eric Bischoff will, cover the tracks or whatever, but Sting should have went over. I don't care if he showed up without a tan. They said he showed up and he didn't have a tan. Well, he was Gothic in the Crow. He didn't supposed to be out at the beach surfer style Sting. He was depressed and dark. But, I think Sting should have went over, man. It was a heck of a buildup. Baby, that may have been the best buildup in professional wrestling history. Andre and Hogan and WrestleMania 3 was a heck of a buildup too. And there's been some good ones, but that one in my lifetime, what I was able to remember and everything, man, I think that was the best buildup. And it went over 2 years. I mean, heck, that's unheard of, man. That's unheard of. She's a runner. I'm going to change this music just for a minute before we go into our next question. Love my Squire, man. But he's been on a little bit here, so let's change it up a little bit here. Let's go to Rat. My good friend Timothy Joshua Hall has a really in-depth question here, and I'm pumped to try to answer it here. He said, hold on here. I'm involved in a lot of different professions, ranging from highway department to independent wrestling. Some of these opportunities didn't come until I was older in age. What was some of the driving forces that kept me from entering these professions when I was younger? Heck of a question, dude. You know me since I've been 7 years old. Been a really close friend of mine. If I had a manager in life, it would definitely be you. I always said that. Dude, I'm 38 right now. And I started working my shoot job when I was 19. And, that's what puts the bread on the table. But I've got into everything I wanted to do as a kid. I wanted to go for it. Even if it wasn't on the grandest stage, I wanted to get my toes in the water and see what it was like, man, from mixed martial arts, professional wrestling, podcasts, and calling high school basketball, like doing that. Middle school basketball is fun. Dude, to be honest with you, it's just timing, really. In my 20s, I was in the MMA and boxing. I was young, easy to get in shape at that point. So that was kind of what I wanted to do. Once I got a little older, 30, I said, it's time to do pro wrestling. It's time, finally. I should have done that a long time ago, but I'm still active in the pro wrestling circuit. And a few years ago, got into broadcasting basketball, man, and football, done football. It's fun. I've got my own style, Jesse the Body Ventura, like add in a little bit of excitement on it. We've had a good time, me and my brother. My father-in-law, we've had some real fun times calling those games. The older I get, I realize that my physical hobbies, I guess you say, fighting, wrestling stuff, that's going to have to take a back seat. I understand, but this podcast stuff, man, and doing these interviews and stuff like that, that's kind of what I imagine Adam in his 40s is going to be doing a lot of. Working out still, obviously. I'll always work out and try to take care of myself best I can. But I like doing these, and I think that's something that I'll continue to go after. Just didn't really, I guess, timing is what is the main factor on all those questions, my man. Good question, though. Mason Williams. So was that really Robert in Starcade 86? He said 84, but it was 86. It was actually John Paul Jones, and he got his head shaved by the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. But we thought it was him. Yes, you're absolutely right. My good friend Mikey Taggart says Prime Tyson versus Prime Foreman. Wow. Now that, my friend, is a battle of two mean, tough boxers. Prime Tyson, I would have said back in the day, I would have said he would have been the most dangerous fighter of all time until I really started digging into George Foreman, like old George Foreman. And, George Foreman was just, Tyson had problems with taller guys. He had problems with Buster Douglas, Lennox Lewis, any tall guy with range. And Foreman wasn't just a tall guy. He had brutal power. George could hit you in the arm and break your neck. Or, hit you on, he just, the power he packed in a punch. Now, Tyson was quick. It wasn't really the power with Tyson. It was the quickness, man. And he was powerful, but his speed was really what was his, for a heavyweight, was his bread and butter. Now, Foreman, I think George would have beat Tyson. I think George would have probably stopped him. You go back and watch George Foreman and Ron Lyle, and that's two heavyweights beating each other to death, knocking each other down. And I just don't know that Tyson, either one of them, Ron Lyle would have given Tyson problems. And I'm a big Tyson fan too, man. I think Tyson could beat anybody on any given night, ever. Ali, Foreman, he had that. He could have beat anybody on any given night, but also he could have lost to guys he shouldn't have lost to. So that's just a fight game. But I would have took prime George Foreman. My good friend Jerry Scott from Mountaintop Media, and Jerry's been on here. We've had ourselves a couple of shows, talk pro wrestling managers. We also compared Fright Night and Lost Boys. That was a fun one. He said the most underrated member of a rock band, and I'll go ahead and answer with Izzy Stradlin, but my take. Izzy is a great choice, but my choice is Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones. Charlie Watts was my favorite drummer of all time, and he had this English gentleman, like fatherly vibe for the Rolling Stones, man. He wasn't what you would consider one of the wild rock stars or nothing like that, but if you go back and you watch documentaries or read up on the Rolling Stones, they all respected him. And like if you there's one incident where he went down in the lobby one night and punched Mick Jagger in the mouth, and he was just not to be messed with. And he had that groove and that look, man. And he was just underrated in a band with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, and those guys, man. Charlie Watts deserves a lot more credit than he got. And, that was my favorite drummer of all time and most underrated. Izzy's, you can say Izzy too. I say Izzy's very underrated. He was the heart and soul of GNR, but if I can't say Izzy, I'm definitely going Charlie Watts from the Stones. Last question I got here is from my good friend Jacob Goebel at East Kentucky Barbell. Had Jacob on the audio format on Anchor. We done a show together, and it was cool, man. Jacob Goebel's got a gym down here at Iville, Kentucky, and it's an awesome place to work out if you ever get a chance. He's a veteran, done a lot of MMA training back in the day with some names, dude, and we sit back all the time and talk about it. But he's got a really interesting question here. He said, best base for MMA, wrestling or BJJ? And outside of the Gracie family, who do you believe paved the way for modern day MMA as we know it? Heck of a question, Jacob. Best base, I think, is wrestling. Obviously, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when this whole thing first started, was able to throw submissions on wrestlers because wrestlers, they'd get them in their dominant position, and Jiu-Jitsu artists would just manipulate them and throw you take Dan Severn and Hoist Gracie at UFC 4, Severn stayed in Gracie's guard for the whole fight long. He was in the dominant position. He got him down. And then out of nowhere, Gracie sneaks in that triangle and taps Big Dan Severn, the Beast, one of my all-time favorites, taps him out, man. Just a simple mistake. But as mixed martial arts continue to grow and everybody got wiser and studied more and people train different hybrids of martial arts, wrestling guys got smarter, and they also trained jiu-jitsu, so they were studying submission defense also. But starting out, jiu-jitsu was the ace up your sleeve, man. If you had submission style, I mean, even not just submissions, because Ken Shamrock had like a submission game, but it wasn't jiu-jitsu. I mean, it was like a shoot catch wrestling kind of deal and stuff. But I would say right now wrestling is the best base to have. I was when I got into it, I trained a little bit of everything. But stand up was probably what I was best. And I trained a lot of boxing, but you can train all the striking in the world, man. If you don't have good grappling, it's all over for you, dude, honestly. Because 9 times out of 10, if you ain't lucky enough to get that knockout quick, you're going to end up in a clinch situation, or you're going to end up on the ground. And nowadays, a wrestler is he knows a lot. So it ain't the wrestlers of the old days. Who do I believe paved the day? Shoot, I can't talk. Jacob Goebel smacked me and called me Susan. Who do I think paved the way for modern day MMA as we know it? All right, good question. And in my honest opinion, I think that started with The Ultimate Fighter, because I was a fan, as you were, of the dark days. I grew up from the UFC 1, 2. I mean, from the time I was 10 years old, man, 9 years old to be exact, I was watching it. So I was a fan. But the one situation that really paved the way for what we know as mixed martial arts right now is when Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner had that fight on Spike TV with The Ultimate Fighter. That just exploded. Everybody got to see it. It was on free TV. I think Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, and Randy Couture, that trilogy, or not trilogy, but that rivalry of all three of those guys, along with Ultimate Fighter gaining traction. So many guys were made, like Rich Franklin, Mad Hughes, Anderson Silva, those guys, BJ Penn. That era right there just kept snowballing into and then that's when it hit, man. That's what paved the way. And then you had Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor, John Jones. That era is just, it's where you're at now. But I think modern MMA was paved due to The Ultimate Fighter of Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin's fight, Randy, Chuck, and Tito. I think that's my opinion. I mean, everybody else, there ain't no wrong answer, because everybody's got their opinions, what helped them get into it. But that would definitely be mine. And I'm going to check and make for sure I don't have any questions popped up on here before we end this. Had a heck of a time, though. As of right now, there is no questions. Like I said, I've got some guests lined up. Marshall Teague, that's going to be fun. Kobe Adkins, Nicholas Little, a couple good professional wrestlers around the area. We're going to talk to them. Marshall Teague from Roadhouse. Actually, Brad Imes, too. I've talked to Brad Imes about coming on. He was finalist on Ultimate Fighter 2. He fought Rashad. He's 6'9", big dude. Heck of a fight with Rashad Evans in the finals of the UFC Ultimate Fighter 2, Season 2. So got some stuff lined up, and I like doing these solo shows. So everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll get this subscribe, like, go over to Bo's Tractor Works, get you some of that Appalachian Hills 11, and go down to Richard Burchett and Weird Ass Hot Dogs and get you the serial killer. That's what I mean. Jalapenos, cheese, jelly, and man, that's tough right there. I always like that part of this song. Jelly on there with Applejack. Ooh, baby. So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. And I'm going to put this up. Thank you all. Share this video, like this channel, subscribe. Ooh, Lord. Ah. Thank you guys.